I'm live, and I have my good friend, my senior, somebody I've had the privilege of just listening to talking about money. And there's a time Chechetu alisema we're talking about money today. Kaambia wanaume, man. I left there very, encouraged. And just want him to introduce himself here. Karibu sana Pasi.
Oh, thank you, Mankaris. It's good to be here. Gitau Mushoke is my name. I'm a pastor. I work with Nairobi Chapel, domiciled in Thika, under the banner Trinity Chapel Thika.
Awesome.
And it's good to be here. It's good to have me here.
It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Rev Gitau.
Thank you.
Is it Rev or Pastor? Nasikiaga kuna tofauti ya Rev na Pastor.
Rev is a title, Pastor is the calling. I'm a shepherd.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rev, karibu sana.
Asante sana.
I've titled the sharing today Tithing 101.
Yes.
Yeah, because kienda campus pale, the first class ilikuwa itago 101.
101.
Like
yes.
We are coming to a place of haujui sasa, wacha tuanze sasa. That's the assumption I'm having here. Because I believe, and I said here, kama kuna blessing iko kwa wazazi, we ought to get those blessings.
Yes.
We ought to do everything to, in our own power to get those blessings. If there is a blessing that is in tithing, for example, we have to get such blessings. And guys are saying, pastors wanatuibia, hii ni kitu ya kutuibia. Some are saying, tithing is an Old Testament thing.
Yes.
In the new dispensation, Christ just wants a cheerful giver.
Yes.
Where's the place of tithing? Yeah, I find it interesting that there are things we can separate Old Testament and New Testament from, because I also sat somewhere where a conversation like tattoos and stuff, they kijana asimamishwa amebishwa sana, and I was like, this, if we go the dividing Old Testament and New Testament, we can also divide this particular aspect of conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, but you see, there are some have not been divided. There are some like tithing nasema hii ni ya kitambo bwana, hii ni wakati wa kina Musa.
Yes.
Hii ilikuwa mambo ya Abraham.
Yes.
Hii si mambo yetu.
Abrahamic covenant.
Yes, hii si mambo yetu. And so I sit here as a student, number one. Let me just say that, as a student, because I've also had my issues, or rather, conviction. Then niko hapa pia hapa make sense.
Yes.
So I also sit here as a student.
Okay.
Yes, and mwalimu karibu.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, Mankaris. Now, it's exciting that young people are interested in learning this. It's a good thing. That's a good place to start. And I say that because we are having a generation of people who are relying so much on what the parents did. Maybe to digress a bit, you hear people telling you that I know my mom prays for me. But the question is, do you ever pray for yourself? And when your children say that my father or my mother prayed for me. Now, when it comes to giving as well, on tithing, it's the same thing. I know many people keep saying, I know my mom gives. I know my mom is faithful in tithing. In fact, I support her in giving. Or my dad. I don't know why it's mostly moms. I don't know why it's never dads.
That's give. And then mtoe.
So, and we're like, okay, so it's a good thing to begin. It's a good place to begin this. And now what we'll do is that for the next 4 weeks or so, we'll get to break this into different aspects. And I encourage many people to ask as many questions as they can, so that we're able to break this down and have to understand this. And let me say this, if you draw a circle and divide this into two, we have the part to your right is a part of expenditure, and the part to your left is a part of income. Unfortunately, most people never get exposed to the left side, the part of income. They are only exposed to the left, to the right side. That is the expenditure side. Because growing up, you were given some money. Mankaris going to school, you were given money for shopping. You were never really told that this is how I got my money, mostly by parents. And it's a bit sad because most parents never expose their children to their means of income.
Soko.
Then you are highly favored.
Alikuwa anasema leo.
Yes.
And then muoshe nyanya. We took out the duties.
But very few people are exposed to that. Many are just given cash, so they only know the part of expenditure. But even being sent to the market, you didn't really get to know how. How did this nyanya come from the market or from the farm to here? How much was spent? How much was spent on transport to get here? So you're only exposed to the expenditure side. So you're never exposed to the income side. And that's why we always make mistakes, not just about tithing, even about planning for our resources, even about budgeting, about all the other facets of resources. We never get to know that because we are never exposed to the full spectrum of resources. So what I desire to do today is to teach us just 2 lessons. Reflect and remember. And the part of reflecting, it will help you get to understand and never struggle with giving again. Because you reflect on where you've come from. I know, Caris, you were born and raised somewhere by wonderful parents, and you became who you are today. It is growing up. There are people that you went to school with. Some did not go past class 8. Others did not go beyond class form 4. By the way, let me surprise you. Very, very soon, another generation that is coming will be thinking we are too old when you're talking about class 8, because you're talking about grade 6. And it's very, very soon. Actually, they are there. In the next few years, they'll be competing with us in the marketplace. So they'll think we are too old. Now, but by the time you were doing class 8, there are people that you went to school with. Others maybe because they didn't want to go to school. Others maybe they never qualified to join secondary school. And then after form 4, you went to campus. Others didn't go to campus. I still remember to date, this guy that I met. I used to be a school captain. Let me brag a bit. I used to be a school captain. I mean, I look like a good man. So, and as a school captain, there's this particular guy who stole my novel. Actually, I gave my novel to him. Then he disappeared from school and never even returned my novel to date. And I remember him telling me in my mother tongue that really, it's not the panties that I'm having here. I can do without this, and I can make money out there. And this guy just disappeared.
Saying masomo.
He said, no, masomo is not everything.
Hiyo statement iko huko nje sana.
Exactly, masomo is everything. And he disappeared. A while back, I met him. I'm not a relatively young man. Neither am I too old. Some in between there. So I met him somewhere in my town. Allow me not to mention my hometown. So I went him and he called me. I was like, Captain, I wish ningesoma kama we manze. Life here ni kali. Stuff. He was pushing a katroli ya kuuza some karikari, some pombe or something. And it was embarrassing because I'm looking at him. I can't even remember who he was. I have no recollection. And he's trying to remind me. Of course, when he called me captain, I thought maybe this guy was one of my classmates. And later I got to recollect that, oh, this is the guy. Now, reflecting is very important because it tells you that it is God who has brought you this far. It is God who has been with you. So when it comes to giving, you give by reflecting on what God has done for you. That God has blessed you with these resources. He's given you brilliant minds. Some people that are listening to us today are engineers. Others are doctors. Others are nurses. Others are whatever they are. Others are teachers. Whatever profession they are in. Others into the business world, and they are thriving by their careers. It's interesting because today people are making more money now than ever before. And younger people, for that matter, are making more money today more than before. Today, there are more chances of making money more than in any other generation.
Wow.
It is today, by the way, you don't even need so much. I remember when growing up, and I remember starting my first organization, I wanted to advertise. And I went to some print media in this nation. And it was too expensive for me as a startup. But today, they don't need all that. They just need a Facebook page, IG, and they need to tweet. They need to have their status, and they're able to advertise for their products. So even young people today are able to reflect and say, the amount of money I am earning now, relatively, you are earning more than your parents were earning in your age. Maybe you might tell us maybe the value then was more, was higher, and all that. That's not the thing, and that's why I use the word relatively. You are earning more than that generation. So reflect on what God has done for you. Reflect on His goodness. He's given you some brilliant mind. He's given you an opportunity. He's given you an idea. He has given you an enabler to grow in this society. So reflect on that. Once you reflect, then it helps you remember some Bible verse in the book of Deuteronomy. And I know I'll be blamed for going to the Old Testament. That's where you begin. Of course, you can't begin here. You begin there and come this way. Because the Old Testament talks about the prophecy. It points us to Christ. So whenever you are reading that, it is pointing you somewhere to the New Testament. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18 says this: "And you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers, as it is this day." Now, that is very profound. That you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power
to make wealth.
When you talk about power, so when he gives you the strength, when he gives you the ability, when he gives you that skill, when he gives you that opportunity, when he gives you the understanding. So God is challenging us and challenging the children of Israel that when you get to that land that I am promising you, remember the Lord your God, for he has given you the power to make wealth. So the second lesson is we must remember. Remember, it is God who's given us.
Wow.
Now, once you understand that, then it becomes very easy for you to become a blessing. I'm finding people today complaining about something they're calling black tax. Yeah? And you're thinking, black tax? A parent who's raised 5 children, and these 5 children cannot raise one parent or 2 parents, and you're just thinking that we are complaining about black tax, and they give us life, they give us everything, they give us. I mean, there's a day that you are a nobody, but I look at my children, and some of them who are still on diapers, and I'm looking at them and thinking, now, will these children one day jishika kiuno somewhere and forget all that I've done here? The same thing. When
we say it's your role.
It's my role, yes. It's my role, yes. And by the way, not that I'll be charging them. Anyway, my desire is that I'll keep making as much money as I am making now, so that they will come not to bring black tax, but to get blessed from me as a parent. So it is important to think that
I also look at mine, and I'm like, man, like I see what young people are writing on FB and on Twitter there about, we did not ask you to give birth to us, even the conversation of home care versus, taking care of them, etc. Yes. I always ask, hey, huyu sasa tumekula na mangori usiku hivi na nini. I think every parent gets to that space of, okay, how will this also happen? Yeah, so it's a legit concern.
Exactly, it's a legit concern, and I think I really understand, and it's important to start thinking. Now, if you don't give towards God, then it will become so hard for you to even invest towards your future.
Nice.
Because you'll never think about the future. Because one thing that tithe does to you is that it teaches you to live below your means.
To live below your means.
Not within your means.
Let's pause.
Yes.
For some business update on the other side of the studio.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to pick from below and within your, notes hapa zinaandikwa.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
That is good. Thank you.
This is the afternoon switch in your afternoon shift with Man. Hujambo msikilizaji na karibu. Bodi ya Kitaifa ya Nafaka na Mazao NCPB imetenga vituo vya kukausha nafaka na maabara ya kupima viwango vya sumu ya aflatoxin kwenye bidhaa za chakula. Hatua hii imekaribishwa na wakulima wengi wa nafaka, kwani sasa itapunguza hasara inayoshuhudiwa baada ya kuvuna kutokana na ukosefu wa sehemu ya kuhifadhi. Wakulima wa nafaka sasa watapata huduma za kukausha, kuhifadhi, kusafisha na hata kupima viwango vya sumu ya aflatoxin kwenye mazao yao. Hii ni kwenye ghala za NCPB. Hatua hii pia inatarajiwa kuwakinga wakulima wa nafaka dhidi ya hasara inayotazamiwa kushuhudiwa wakati wa mvua ya El Nino humu nchini inayotabiriwa kunya. Na matumizi ya bidhaa za mafuta kati ya mwezi wa Januari hadi Juni mwaka huu yamepungua kwa kiwango kikubwa. Data rasmi inaashiria kuwa matumizi ya petroli yamepungua kwa 5%. Hii ni kutoka lita bilioni 1.074 hadi kufikia lita bilioni 1.01. Matumizi ya dizeli pia yamepungua kwa 4% kutoka lita bilioni 1.36 mwaka jana hadi lita bilioni 1.31. Wadadisi wanasema kuwa huenda hii imechangiwa na hatua ya kuongezeka kwa bei ya bidhaa za mafuta humu nchini, huku ikisemekana kuwa Wakenya sasa wamechagua kutotumia magari yao na kutumia magari ya umma mbadala. Ndio mwisho wa taarifa za biashara. Jina langu ni Faith Kaulu. Kwa heri.
Shajara la biashara. Another quality service from Christ is the Answer Ministry.
Nina imani siku za mateso zitapita. Nina imani siku ya kutoka ghetto itafika. Nitapata mabawa, nitapaa, nitaitangaza, nitang'aa. Ninayotamani moyoni nitapata. No, 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 no. Sitasahau, sitasahau. Walionishikilia sitasahau. Walioniombea sitasahau. Ni Mungu amenitendea sitasahau. Sitasahau. Walionishikilia sitasahau. Walioniombea sitasahau. Ni Mungu amenitendea sitasahau. Oe. Oe.
You're listening to Sweet Mapesa. You're listening to Sweet Mapesa. Listen and live.
Sitalegea kushika mtu mkono, na nikiitwa somewhere kusaidia. Hata kama sina fare nitatembea, nitashare hiyo kidogo, sitajiwekea. Sitalegea kushika mtu mkono, na nikiitwa somewhere kusaidia. Hata kama sina fare nitatembea. Sitasahau. Walionishikilia sitasahau. Walioniombea sitasahau. Ni Mungu amenitendea sitasahau. Sitasahau. Walionishikilia sitasahau. Walioniombea sitasahau. Ni Mungu amenitendea sitasahau.
That's a money J there.
Nitashare
Sitasahau.
kidogo, sitajiwekea. Sitalegea kushika mtu.
And now we're here with Rev Gitau.
Na nikiitwa somewhere
I see your messages here hapa. Brian anasema good job. Mkanaye anauliza, anasema kuna venye tithing is overrated. First fruit ni mara moja. Questions coming in.
Yes.
Pia anauliza, out of that person who doesn't have constant earnings every month, but he or she has purpose to give a constant figure every month to their church. I think as we continue, we'll be getting to even the first fruits versus,
yes.
What is it you're tithing?
Are you tithing from gross or from net?
Swali ngumu.
Okay.
Before we went to the break, we went to the break. You were talking about, there's within
and below
and below. Kindly just expound on that.
I think I say that tithing helps you. Once you reflect on where God has brought you from, then you remember his goodness and you remember his faithfulness, and you start tithing. Then the first thing that tithing does to you is that it helps you live below your means.
Mm-hmm.
The reason unto why many people today have no savings even for rainy day is because they live beyond their means. Remember the circle I mentioned earlier, the circle where you divide into two, the right hand side is the expenditure, the left is the income. Because many were never exposed to the income side, so many earn their money and within no time then money is gone. You know, it's interesting how we always complain, and I'm not downplaying the hard times, and because I believe that times are hard now, but it's funny because the economy of our country seems not to work Monday to Thursday. But I think from Friday to Sunday, the economy works because you'll find joints full. And like when fuel cost went to 209, 211, some places, it's funny because many people are in joints discussing the high cost of fuel, but consuming the little that they have. Because many live beyond their means. They get their money and within no time, they have no money. And by the time they're hitting day 5 or the 5th day of the month or 10th day of the month, they are borrowing. They are borrowing into their future. So when you start tithing, it means you are budgeting for your resources right. So you learn to live below your means because you're now not budgeting for the 100%. You are budgeting for 90%.
Okay.
Yeah, you're working with 90%. That will give you some discipline that is required even for you to start saving. By the way, let me throw some whatever right there that you are supposed to live on 50% of your income. 10% goes to tithe, 20% you go into savings for immediate, and 20% goes into your future. Then you start living on 50% of your income. And I know someone could be wondering, how do I do that? This is barely enough. I'm earning just this amount of money. This is barely enough. But tithing helps you start living below your means because you develop that discipline. You inculcate that discipline. You develop, you cultivate this discipline, and you become different altogether. So I want to encourage someone that you need to start tithing now, and you'll see what happens. It will give you some discipline. Because discipline is so important. And some people never make it because they are not disciplined, not because they are not earning so much money. Remember, I told you that this generation is earning more money than any other generation of our time. And we have more opportunities now than any other time. Our challenge is that sometimes we are focusing on the white collar job. Go for that blue one and you will succeed and excel so much. So it helps you that. But number 2, tithing helps you or teaches you who is in control. Who is in control. Now, with all the powers and all the connections that we have and the powers that we have been given by social media to advise anyone, because with social media you can advise anyone. You can advise the President of the United States of America now. Then you can tell them that this is not what they're doing right and all that. But even your power is limited. There are some things that you cannot do. There are some spaces that you cannot go to. However much you might think you're powerful, there are places you cannot go to. In as much as we can advise the government, we can correct the government, even on social media and all that, there are places you cannot go to because we are not in control. Someone else is. So when I tithe, it teaches me to know that someone else is in control. And the person who is in control is a creator of the universe. And I just give back to him. He's not asking for 100%. No, he's asking for 10%. I read some comment somewhere. On this whatever Facebook page right now, someone is saying that tithing is overrated. My problem is that many people tithe, but they don't know what to do with the rest of the 90%. And the 10% helps you protect and all that, and it gives you the discipline, but the 90% ought to be invested right. And if you don't invest right, it doesn't matter how faithful you become, you will remain poor. So you give your 10% to God, because he is in control, and you are reflecting on where you've come from, you are remembering his goodness, and then it gives you the discipline of living below your means, and it teaches you that God is in control. And then the 90% that you're left with, invest it right. And I'm excited, Mankaris, because I know you've invited people here to talk about budgeting, to talk about different spaces where we can invest our resources, to talk about the different things that we can do, even to give us more income, and how to have multiple streams of income. Those are the things that we'll be discussing in the course of our conversation here, having multiple streams of income. And that way, the 90% will grow. It will keep growing and growing and growing. Let me say this, that people keep saying that 10% is an Old Testament item or discussion or requirement. Do you know 10% is the foundation and not the ceiling? When we're giving in the New Testament, the expectation is even higher. The expectation in the New Testament is way higher. If you look at the commandments that Christ gave, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind. And he summarized the 10 into 2. The first 4, they were summarized because it's about vertical relationship, loving the Lord with all your heart. Then the other 6 were summarized into 1. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. When you love your neighbor, you will never steal from them. When you love your neighbor, you will not murder. When you love your neighbor, you will not bear false witness. And all the 6 are summarized by loving your neighbor as you love yourself. So in as much as we might keep saying that this is an Old Testament requirement, the New Testament is even higher. The requirement is even higher. That the requirement is for us to give generously. But if you're struggling with giving the 10%, how can you give generously? You can't. How can you give cheerfully? Because you're taking it to be a rule and a law. And
it's the foundation.
It's a foundation. This is a foundation
Okay.
that a beginner should begin there. And that's why I'm excited that you're calling this Tithing 101, because that's where we should begin. We should begin at 101. That is at 10%. Then we are supposed to keep growing and growing and growing and growing. The people that we see donating even land, donating preaching tracts, donating so much, is because they were able to understand that this is a foundation and I must keep growing. And God has a way of blessing the 90% that you are left with. Yes, a way of opening opportunities for you, and you keep growing and growing and growing.
Pasi,
Yes.
I love what you said.
Yes.
First of all, I said I'm also a student.
Oh, yes.
So on this other side, I'm representing students.
Okay, thank you.
I was a very curious student. I'm still, I am.
In fact, you look very curious.
You talk of discipline, and I see the discipline aspect of it.
Yes.
And somebody will say, because there is a category that really doesn't know. There's this category that doesn't have a problem with tithing, but it has a problem with who is receiving this tithe.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So somebody might be asking, if I give 10% to a children's home, for example,
yes,
it will still inculcate the discipline that you're talking about.
Yes.
Can that be tithing? Can that come up as I'm tithing? I'm not just giving it to the church, but 10% yangu inakuanga ya kusaidia watu na nasaidia watu.
Yes.
Yeah, na discipline ya kutoa imeingia because nimepata.
Yes.
Can that be considered as tithing?
I think our major challenge is our narrow perspective of looking at tithing in terms of giving tithings to the pastors and to the church. But we must look at the wider perspective of winning the world for Christ. We must look at that. We must look at other places, even in this country, Kenya, that are unreached. We have people who are unreached. And the money that is supposed to come to church, it should go into supporting mission work and doing the work of God. All these ministers that we send as missionaries to Northeastern or to other parts of this country, we are supposed to support them. We are supposed to support their work. So it's not just giving to a particular person or giving to a pastor. It is giving to the kingdom. And once you give back to the kingdom, and when you talk about giving, by the way, I've done a book. I've written a book called Making Sense, and in the last chapter that I call giving back to God or glorifying God with your wealth, it is not just giving to the church. it is giving to the community,
Mhm.
remembering your community.
Mhm.
That's why when I talk about budgeting for your money, you should not just think about giving 10%. It is also blessing the community.
Mhm.
And our other challenge is that we think tithe in terms of money.
Mhm.
You can tithe your time.
Ah.
Yeah. You can say that I know I tithe my money, but also tithe your time.
Mhm.
You could be having children in your neighborhood who are in some day school, and maybe you just need to go there and inspire them. They just need to hear your word.
Mhm.
When you start giving, letting go of these resources, the 10% money, it frees so many other things.
Ah.
It frees so many other things. And you start seeing other areas where you can keep giving and giving and giving to the world and to the community.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Reflect and
Remember.
And remember.
Yes.
Wow. Tumeanza vizuri. Questions are coming here.
Oh, thank you. Let them be coming.
There's something per se. Even I think we have a few minutes to go.
Yes.
You talked about it as a discipline. You've talked
Yes.
about it as honoring, the one who gives.
Yes.
Is it a law? Is it a commandment?
Mhm.
Because tukianzia hapo pia
Yes.
mi najuaga naambiwago hii si kitu ya kudiscuss na Mungu.
Mhm.
Hii ni kitu amesema.
Mhm.
Do not rob me.
Yes.
That is the word. Mnanibia,
Mnani-
mnaninyang'anya. That's where when talk about tithing that's where most people start.
Yes.
And I'll be bold enough to ask you this question.
Yes.
You've put it in a nice way. We're
Yes.
thinking about it. We're seeing logic in all of it.
Yes.
Where there is a command, at times there is no logic.
Yes.
It's you do.
Mhm.
Is it a command?
Mhm. Now, I think it's important for us to understand something. And because we keep saying that this is an Old Testament concept, when it comes to the New Testament, and we talk about grace, grace demands that we go higher than the normal. Grace demands that we give back so much because we are doing this out of love. Let me put an example. A few years back, I went down the aisle and I took vows to love my wife as Christ loved the church. Now, that's not a law. When I take it as a law, I feel bound. When I take it as a law, I don't feel happy doing it because God loves a cheerful giver. So when you take this as a form of grace, that I am giving back to this God that I love so much, who has loved me so much and lavished me with all these resources. So because of that love, I am giving back to him and I'm giving back to him cheerfully. When it becomes law, it becomes enslaving. When it becomes love, it becomes freeing. So you give back to God in form of love and giving back to him, saying, because I love you so much, God, I want to give back to you because I love you and you've done good to me. You've blessed me so much. I've reflected on where I come from and I'm remembering his goodness and I'm remembering his love and I'm remembering the opportunities that he's opened for me. And that way, I give back in form of love, not in form of law.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the heart, that the attitude behind the giving matters.
Yes. Oh yeah, the heart. It's about the heart. And allow me to say this. Allow me to say this. That the information that we are sharing here will go to the head, so people will comprehend this. Okay. But it should not remain in the head. It must go to the heart where you get convicted. Until you get convicted, it can never go to the hands where it becomes your culture. That I love back, I give back. I don't want my children to obey me because of my laws. I want them to obey me because they love me as their father. When I visit my mom in the village, I want to hang out. I just want to be with her. I don't go with a clock saying that I'll be here for the next 10 minutes. No, I just want to hang around her, just to hang out with her, just to talk, and she'll give me amazing stories. My mom is an amazing storyteller. She must be listening to me now. She's an amazing storyteller, and there are stories she has repeated like 27 times, like repeated again, because I love her as my mother. I don't get bored. So sometimes we are in the living room and on my couch, and she's on her couch, and we're just enjoying our time together as mother and son. The same thing, that when I learn to love God and I give back to God, I will not look at it in terms of law, that I must do it again. Now when you get that salary, you're like, now I must do this again. Now I must, it's boring, it's tiring. No. Let it be in terms of you're convicted, that it becomes your culture. It has become my culture to me that I never struggle with this. So if you're struggling, check your heart. It's an issue of the heart. Are you convicted that really it is God who has brought you this far? So you can only give back to Him. You can only just bless back and give back to Him. And He's not asking for 100. He's asking for just 10% as the foundation, not the ceiling.
Wow. What I'm getting per se,
Yes.
even as this first class is about to come to an end.
Yes.
And you've talked of father or other parents,
Yes.
kids relationship.
Yes.
There are two kinds of kids here. There's a law here that says uko usiingie past saa moja. And there's this one that enjoys the company of home so much that hata saa moja inampatanga naturally.
Yes.
And then there's this one who would want to do it out of ni sheria.
Yes, ni sheria.
One will actually be very happy. The other one will be doing it out of a lot of push and stuff.
Yes.
And looking at it, the parents mean well. Saa moja inje ni kunoma, and it's dangerous.
That is very true, yes.
So I feel like we need what I'm learning also, and this is my prayer also as we continue,
Yes,
is to move from a place of seeing God's directive, also understanding the kind of people who are being talked to versus the kind of people who we are.
yes.
Can also help in understanding this command versus command ni ya mtu ameamua kuwa kichwa ngumu.
That is very true.
Na
That
kenye
is very
tunataka
true.
hapa ni knowledge demystify hiyo kichwa ngumu tuko nayo.
Exactly.
Ama hii thought process tunakuanga nayo ya hii inaenda hapa,
Yes.
inaenda kwa huyu, inaenda kwa, like we see beyond where we are taking these monies.
That is very true.
Wow.
That is very true.
So I think first class, kama kutakuwa na cut, mimi niko tayari.
In fact, the interesting thing is that the Bible records that they were given the laws because of their hard hearts.
Yeah, hard hearts.
That's why that law became.
Wow.
Yeah. If they were to love God back, then there will be no laws. There will be no laws. We'll just love Him back, and we'll enjoy being in the company. When you love someone, you want to go that extra mile.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You want to go that extra mile. Look at a young girl and a young man who are dating. Because they love each other. How do they operate? They don't wait to be reminded to take each other for coffee because they love each other. Look at people who are dating. As you go home today, pass by some Java somewhere.
Jamaa amenunua samosa, yeye anameza mate.
Exactly, na anasema mimi nilikuwa nimekula home. I still remember to date one time. One time, by the way, I was dating this girl, and one time we are in a hotel, so I bought her some kuku and all that, and mimi nimesema nikunywe kasoda. I'm like, mimi nilikuwa nimekula, niko sawa, niko sorted. Acha nikwambie bwana, the girl kalikula hiyo kuku like half. But I was tempted to tell the waiter, I have some cat at home. Unaweza nifungia. But because of love, I'm able to go that extra mile. Not that I had so much money, but you're able to go that extra mile. The same thing. When you love God with all your heart, it will not be an issue. By this, you go and you can tell guys who are dating.
You can say, it reminds me, there was a time I was about to be left. Here nilikuwa nimeambiwa tumeachana.
Oh, like really?
I had 25 bob. After ya kwenda Kawangware,
Wow.
nilikuwa nakaa place nito Katina. I used to work hapa hivi Africa Nazarene Church.
Okay.
So hapo nje I bought yai. Sikuwa nimeuma kitu.
Wow.
And my wife now alikuwa mkam kutembea hapo place. So nikauma. Like, you can't buy me an egg and bite that egg. But I was dying. I was so hungry. So as you're talking about the extent we go for love,
Exactly,
versus
yeah.
the extent we ought to go for God.
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, it's sinking.
But by the pass by, you'll see them loving on each other, enjoying. Sometimes they can only afford a cup of coffee or maybe just a glass of juice, and they will be there for hours and hours and hours talking. I remember those days, dating days. We'll talk and talk up to midnight. Mnaongea tu na simu, mnaongea yake inaisha ya time, unamcall. We'll know all the offers that were there. Why? Because of love. The same thing. When I love God, I will not struggle with these things. I would like to give even more than 10%.
It's from a place of love.
Yes.
It being in the Old Testament is a foundation.
Yes.
And now we are talking about the ceiling, so you cannot get there without a firm foundation.
Oh, that is very true.
That's a take home, Manze.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Pasi, for coming.
Thank you.
That is Tithing 101. I promised you an awesome conversation. And not just a conversation. I told you we are going to class.
Yes.
And class has started. By the end of this, the conviction of your heart will be in the right place. If you have a question, you can always ask, because this is an open forum, and Rev is ready. And thank you so much, Rev, for coming. And somebody asking about the book. It was
making sense. Making sense.
I think as we continue, we'll also break down some of the things there.
That is very
because
true.
Right now, naona kwa studio huko kumeshikana, watu wameingia. But see, anybody who wants to get you, in a private not even private, like not on this forum.
Yes.
Social media, or how do they get to you?
They can get me through my Facebook page, Gitau Mushogia, or my Twitter at Gitau Mushogia.
At Gitau
my Twitter handle. Yes,
wow.
They can get me there. And we can talk there, and they'll get more about the book and about some classes that I run on financial management.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Wow. And some fact is, many Christians give tithe out of fear. To Turkey, you give out of fear.
Give out of love.
Why we are here. Thank you, Pasi, and God bless you.
Amen.
I can't wait for next Tuesday.
Thank you. Looking forward. See you then.
See you then.
Thank you.